So let's get started. And as I said, I appreciate everybody being here and taking a listen to what we're going to see today. And my objective here is to introduce you to the Power BI Connector, not really to teach you about Power BI per se. Probably a bunch of you out there know as much or more about Power BI than I do, but I certainly feel like we want to introduce you to what you can do with Stratum and how it can integrate with Power BI. So onwards here. Intros, I'm Frank Bunker. I'm not going to ask all of you to introduce yourselves, but I'm responsible for product management and development here at Sylvan. I've been around, there's a lot of you, I know a lot of you as I look at the list of people that are here. I've been here a long time. I know a lot about Stratum and how it works and why we do the things that we do. So hopefully I can explain that to you and how show you how you might be able to take advantage of the Power BI Connector. So with that, let me just talk a little bit about how the Power BI Connector in a general sense fits into our product strategy, which may or may not be something new for you guys. But this is the Stratum Data Hub diagram that we've been showing for quite some time now. And the idea is in the middle, you've captured your information, different types of information in Stratum. And what we're trying to do here at Stratum, at Sylvan, and have done pretty successfully, I think, in the last X number of releases, is provide different ways to interact with the information in Stratum, whether that's gathering new information, whether that's using that information in other forms or in other ways. And if you really think about the 7.1 release that we put out there, we really focused over here on this side of things. You know, you think about, we added the new data import, which was 7.1. We added some additional dashboarding features in Stratum. And that was in 7.1. And in 7.1.2, we've added the Power BI Connector. And this connector piece, which for those of you on the tech side might be interested, you'll continue to see some other connectors becoming available for Stratum. And this is an interesting piece because we added a REST API under the covers in Stratum that allows us to leverage information and specifically the views that you guys have created and take advantage of in Stratum as another way to get data to other sources of information or other sources that other ways you might want to visualize or work with that information. So that was a key part for us under the covers architecturally to have that piece available to us, and it allows us to move data around in an XML or JSON format. So with that, it fits right, this whole thing fits right into our strategy along this side of really Stratum as a data hub, distributing information, allowing you to use it in a lot of different places, but knowing that you've got that consistent and trusted version of information coming out of Stratum that's collected in a systematic way, but also now allowing you, with what we did in the first 7.1 iteration, to collect information maybe from Excel or other places as well. And we'll actually see a little bit of that today as it's part of my demo. But the other thing with the Power BI Connector is how do you get it? So you have to upgrade to 7.1.2, which includes all of the enhancements I just spoke about, the data import, the Stratum dashboards, and the Stratum Power BI Connector. And let's see, to get the data import piece, you do have to have Stratum planning and you have to be running in a Windows environment. But that's one piece. That is not required for you to use the Stratum dashboards. That is another piece, not part of today's demo, but we've done some insight classes on that. And the Stratum BI Connector, Stratum Power BI Connector, is actually part of the broadcast server. And it does not require you to be on Windows, though. You can, if you have the broadcast server, you can take advantage of the Power BI Connector. And there is a document, the What's New document for 7.1. It goes through all this stuff today. You know, if I was just scroll through this document, you can see, you know, here's the first thing we did, the data import, but getting down to the last page here somewhere. Maybe not quite the last page. Somewhere in here, there we go. It talks about the Power BI Connector as well. So, and there's a separate, actually, what's new specifically around the Power BI as well. So this is all documentation you guys either should have been notified of via email. If you're not on that email list, let us know. You can do that either on the homepage in Stratum, or I'll have some stuff come up in my PowerPoint here, some other contact points where you can get a hold of us and you can send stuff off. And you would have been notified of this, and you can actually get links to this. And then, as I said, ultimately, you've got to get to 7.1.2. You've got to get to 7.1.2. This is a very simple upgrade if you're already on 7.1. It doesn't do much, and quite frankly, it's a pretty simple upgrade regardless of where you're coming from. So let's see, that was just how do you get here, what do you need, and ultimately you need the 7.1.2 to get the Stratum broadcast and the Stratum broadcast server. You do not need these other pieces, just to be clear. You don't have to have Stratum planning, for example, and you don't have to be using the dashboards to use the Stratum Power BI connector. The Stratum dashboards, just FYI, everybody that uses Viewer has access to those, regardless of platform, regardless of what modules you have. So that was in the base Stratum stuff. So I'll put this slide up again, but if you need to contact us, let us know anything. A bunch of ways to contact us, and we'll go from there. So now let's get on to a little bit of education about the Power BI connector. One of the things I did want to mention is if you get 7.1.2, so you do that upgrade so that you can have access to the Power BI connector. If you're not a Stratum broadcast customer, you are certainly welcome to take advantage of a free trial for 30 days. That's something that we offer. It's very simple. You'll do the upgrade and we'll just give you a code and it'll activate the Power BI connector for you. Or actually, it'll activate the Stratum broadcast server for you, which includes the Power BI connector. That said, that would get you not only the Power BI connector, but it would also get you the high-speed export to Excel, which a lot of people have commented on us and back to us and they really like. It would allow you to do user scheduling of reports and multiple views or reports on an email that you send out. All those things are part of the broadcast server. So you can get a 30-day trial at no cost to you, and just see if it's something you want to take advantage of. So with that, let's get into our demo here. And can't find my demo. Here we go. So a couple of things here. First, be aware, if you're looking for simple dashboarding, simple, easy to use, we added that feature to Stratum back in 7.1.1, and it's available, it's out there, and my homepage is an example of that. This homepage was built just using straight up Stratum views. There's been a couple insight classes on this. You can go back and look, and it's a very easy way for you to quickly get into dashboarding and take advantage of it. Today, we're going to talk about taking that a step further and using views in Power BI to use some of the Power BI visualizations. The new dashboarding does not, in fact, require any of you that are familiar with some of the other dashboarding features we've had. It does not require SharePoint or any of that in the background. It's strictly a component of Stratum and all done within our Stratum website. Let's see, the next thing I wanted to talk about here is, so the Stratum BI connector in and of itself is what's called a MES file that Microsoft has you build that connects you to Stratum and Power BI, and you use it in the Power BI desktop. You can also use it at the Power BI in the gateways for the server. So one of the things, we've got an install process here. We've got an install document that comes with it, and you're going to install this on your local PC so you can use the Power BI desktop version to create reports that you then publish to the web. And that's standard Power BI stuff. That's not a Stratum thing. You can do that. But that's a Power BI thing. As I said, I'm not really going to try and educate you guys too much on Power BI today. But these are the install instructions. What I found, I installed this myself. Our guys let me actually have a copy and install it. And it's dead simple. You just plop it in. And unless you messed around with some of the default directories in your Power BI desktop, which I did not. It's really basically get the object and install it. You do need to be an admin on the PC to be able to install the stuff, but it's very simple to install. It takes just seconds once you get it. And you can download this with the software from that you get off of CustomerNet when you go to get 7.1.2. So that's out there. So the install instructions, that's all you need to do. I'm going to assume you guys already have Power BI, or you're thinking about getting in and messing around with it. And I thought I would just first show some of the kinds of things you can do. You know, here's an example. So I'm up in the web. I've published this report, and this is all data that came from 2 different views in Stratum. What I find interesting here, just if I was thinking about this, I've got data here that covers off a couple of things. If you've tried to use Power BI with Stratum in the past and tried to directly connect into our database, you've found certain issues. One of those revolves around attributes, which this down here, the sales units by ABC classification. That ABC classification in my example is actually an attribute of the product. So you'll see here it came across with no problems, and I can use these things pretty simply. I can click on one of them and it'll impact the other grids here. The other is I brought over measures in one view that use time ranges. So you guys are all familiar with Stratum and time ranges, where you have you know, from and to period, year and period that you specify. In this case, I had year-to-date numbers, so that as every time this stuff gets updated, this is on a schedule that gets updated every night. I'll show that in a minute, but that allows you to bring that over, and of course that data is then updated every night as well, the year-to-date number. But on the same display here, you can see I also have data that's going out in my demo. As many of you have heard me say, we're in September. So I have data here that's by month as well. So I'm using time as a dimension in a different view. So what I've done in Power BI is I've used our Power BI connector to bring data in one view that has year-to-date, month-to-date, and other time range information. I have another view that brings in information using time as a dimension, or trended time, I like to call it. So it's bringing in data by January, by month, you know, January, February through December, or if those were fiscal periods, you could do that just as easily and bring that data in. And then that allows me then in Power BI, I join those 2 sets of data together using the modeling feature for those of you that are familiar with it in Power BI. And I'll actually show an example of this in just a minute. And it allows me to link 2 things together. So now I have data that's impacted both if it's month to, if it's year to date, or it's monthly. Those 2 things, as I select different things here, are actually impacted. And I can also use the attribute information that's in Stratum. So any attributes come across, and I can actually filter on those as well. And then another thing I can do is I can actually select, for example, here I selected the peach slices here. Everything was Power BI automatically changes all the other graphs there. But the other important thing you can do, and one of the things as we've talked to people about their use of Power BI, is you can get to the detail behind all this stuff in Stratum. It's very difficult to pump up enough data into Power BI to get down to, say, order level, really detailed level about some things. You can see what I'm showing here. It's a much higher level of data, but it's obviously a nice visualization of things, and I think Power BI does a great job of that. But I can go down here, and you see I've added some widgets to this particular display, and I can actually come in here and I can click on one of these. I had selected those peach products on the previous piece there, and you can see up here, it actually, from Power BI, we're allowing you to pass information back to Stratum, so you can open a Stratum view that will allow me to drill down, you know, here, and I can drill down, you know, to whatever level I want. Here I've got salesperson, Wilder Foods, etc. So you know, and this is just standard Stratum stuff. Once you're here, I don't have to go through this, but you can go all the way down to order level, for example, in this particular view. So that's just an example. Again, at the high level, I'm going to now come back around. I want to show you one other thing that's part of Stratum. I'm sorry, part of Power BI, but the Power BI connector allows me to do. I have a report here. This is another report that I have in Power BI. It's published up to the Power BI website, but now I'm able to also go ahead and here's the data set that drives this report. I can actually go in and I can schedule this to be updated. And if I look at the settings for this particular piece, for those of you that are familiar with Power BI, there's the concept of a gateway that exists on your PC. So that's a gateway that would go take information that's on your PC and move it up to Power BI. That's called the personal gateway. And then there's another gateway called the enterprise gateway that can exist, say, on a server. And you'll see here, when I open this up, I've got a gateway connection to my server that pushes information, allows me to push or schedule information to be moved to Power BI. And you can see down here, I could schedule a refresh of this information. I can make it daily, weekly, whatever, pick a time zone. This is standard Power BI stuff. But our Power BI connector, which is attached to this data set, which is called Stratum Sales, allows me to schedule an update. So that data set is updated probably on the same schedule that you're doing your Stratum update. So that data will become available in Power BI and update all of the dashboards and reports that are associated with this particular data set. So with that said, let's kind of talk about how you would make all of this happen using our new Power BI connector. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to assume you've been through the install instructions, you get it installed. And then what I want to do, I'm just going to go to Power BI on my desktop and with a blank slate. So for those of you that are familiar with Power BI, this is the basic Power BI workbench or client that you use to build reports in Power BI. And let's say that I want to connect to Stratum and pull information in. So I can do that. And I'm just going to flip over to Stratum real quick and show you kind of the things that I want to connect to. So the first view I'm going to connect and bring data in is a very simple view for the purposes of example here. And it's a view a lot of you have probably seen. I have this thing called comparative sales, and this view it has rolling three months this year versus last year, current month this year versus last year, and year to date this year versus last year, and it's at this level. Now, one of the things you'll find, any view in Stratum, you can connect through the Power BI connector, and it'll bring that data in. Some things you may not be interested in having views. It's much like for those of you that use our high-speed export, the Excel data export. A lot of the things really bring across some information that's not very useful to you. Things like the conditional formats, different things like that. So what I did was I actually made a copy of this view that had some additional stuff that I wanted to be able to get information out of. So imaginatively enough, I called it Power BI Comparative Sales. You can see this isn't a beautiful view in terms of the way it looks and feels, but it's got a lot of raw information in it, which is what I want to get up to Power BI. So if this is the view that I want to have in Power BI, so I can do some visualizations of rolling 3 months and things like that, this view will work great for me. So I'm just going to go back to Power BI, my blank slate, and the first thing you do, assuming you've installed our connectors, I'm going to come here and say I want to get some data, and I go to the More button. And that's going to bring up the standard Power BI piece about where do you want to get your information from. And when it does that, one of the first things you'll find is that we've now added a connector into into the Power BI selection of connectors, because they have a slew of connectors. You can see right here, you can get all these different things. I'm just going to search on Sylvan. You'll see there'll be one called Sylvan Views. I apologize. I have an old version out there as well, which was an internal beta version, but you'd have this Sylvan Stratum Views, and I'm just going to click on this. And what this is going to do is I'm going to connect, and the first thing it's going to ask me, it's going to tell me it's a third-party service because we're Sylvan and not Microsoft. Then the next thing I'm going to want to do is tell it where my Stratum is. So I'm going to put in the URL for Stratum. And you'll see there, that's where my Stratum is. And now I'm going to connect to that. And I just click OK. And this is going out. That's the same URL that you would use in your browser when you go to Stratum Viewer. It's the same URL. That's where I got that. And these are all of my views that I have in Stratum, and I can select any view. And if you remember, I created a view that was the Power BI comparative sales. So I created a view called that. And I'm going to select this, and now it'll show me a preview of the data so I can look at what the data is going to look like when it comes across. I forget how many rows this is. There's only, it tells me that it's been truncated due to size limits, but this is just a preview of the data. So I can do that, and then I just go ahead and I can load this data, and I'll grab that data, load it up, and you can see here now it's connecting to the view. It's running the view in the background. And now over here on the right, it's going to actually show me all the fields from that view. And this data is in a tabular format, so it's very usable in Power BI. For those of you that are familiar, all the modeling stuff you can do in Power BI, all of those things are available. There's no limitations with regards to how you can take advantage of this data. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple different things here. I'll just create a couple of different things I'm going to use. Let's see. Let's start with maybe a clustered bar chart, for example. I'll just throw that out there. I'm going to use the product brand. Let's see, product brand. Throw that in there. Let's do, rolling 3-month sales this year. So I'm going to take this and drag it into the values. And that gives me a chart over on the right that shows me some Power BI stuff. So I'm now using data from Stratum in Power BI. I've connected on the long description there so that I had the long description displayed there. And I'm showing rolling 3-month year to date, or I'm sorry, this year. If in fact I had this scheduled, that data would be getting updated every time I opened this. It would go ahead and have new data in the data set. And I can do other things here too. I can take the sold to city, for example. So this is my sold to city out of that data. I can actually come down here and say, hey, that's a city. So it's going to recognize that. It's going to recognize that as a city. And I can now take, say, I don't know, a map. I'll bring in a map here. So I'll take advantage. This is one of the requests that we get quite often. I'll bring in a map. Drag this up here. And let's see. I'm going to, let's see. The legend, yeah, I need to put this in the legend, I think it is, to get the cities to display. There we go. And then in the, I'll add year-to-date sales. So this is just standard Power BI stuff. I'm going to add year-to-date sales, drop that in there. And what that's going to do is in this map, it's going to update it and it'll show me everywhere that's in color is where I've had sales. And of course, I can scroll into this some. And this is just mapping in Power BI. So my point is I can go ahead and use this data to see how I've done. I can click over here and it'll interact with this data. So you have that kind of option as well. So again, just using the data from Stratum in Power BI, very simple way to do that. Let's take this one step further, because in a Power BI report, you can have more than one component here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back here and I'm going to get data again. And I'm going to bring in my comparative sales view. So if I go over here, I've got a Power BI comparative sales view that I'll show you. I'm sorry, sales to plan performance view. Let's see here, just say okay. So one of the things here, this is showing me sales to plan. So my plan is 0. I forgot about this, so I'll just go ahead. I'm going to come in here. Now I'm in Stratum. I'm just going to very quickly go ahead and import some data into that sales plan. So I can go here. I can say add this. Now I'm sorry, I'm jumping subjects here, but I am I got to get some data into that view. So I'm going to go ahead and import some data using our new data import facility. I have a plan in Excel. Right now it's just going out, grabbing that spreadsheet I just entered, which happens to have just a number of dimensions with months across the top with a sales plan in it. And I'm going to say replace the data that's there, put it into my sales plan. This data is in time series. And by the way, as I mentioned, we have a separate insight class to be able to do this. So I'm going to go ahead, month to date, say okay. So right now it's just validating the spreadsheet. It'll bring the spreadsheet in. I'll run the import. It takes like 2 seconds for this to import, and I'll be good. So it just brought in all that data. I'm going to put it into my sales plan. I won't go through how you map all this data in Excel. That's not what today's session is about. But again, there's some stuff on this. But this is just using Stratum functionality that is available today. So that thing will run. I'll get an email when that completes. It only takes a few seconds. In the meantime, I'll go back to my Power BI example and, whoops, my Power BI example. I'm going to go ahead and go back, and I'm just going to get data again. I'm going to go back to that Sylvan connector. I'm going to go to Sylvan views. I'm going to connect. Same set of things we saw earlier. Same set of prompts. I'm going to go ahead, connect to my Stratum version, and now it's going to ask me for additional, or which view I'd like to get. And once again, I'm going to say it's a Power BI view, and you'll see here sales to plan was the one I mentioned. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to select sales to plan. It will actually go out and preview the data. So here's all of the data I have in that connection. Just shows me a bunch of different things here. So we should be good. Yep. So I've got all the data. I'm just going to go ahead and load that data. So it'll now have over here on the right, these visualizations that I have here are actually linked to this particular one, but I can now go ahead and get data from my sales to plan and go ahead and put data from this out there. So one of the things I want to do here, though, I want to go into modeling here, and this is I'm just doing this. This is really simple because I want to link these two views together so I can use the data combined from the two. And this is really easy to do. I'm going to come in here. Again, this is standard Power BI stuff. I'm going to come in here and show. Let's see if we can find the product brand. I'm going to use the product brand descriptions to link these two things together. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to choose the product brand long description. I'm just going to link these two things up. I'm going to say okay, and now that exists. So why would I do that? So what's interesting about the Power BI connector here is you can use it at different views in Stratum as multiple data sources in your Power BI reports. So and I can link those views together. So if I have data in one view that I want to use and data in another view, I can now share the data between the two and use information from both of them in a single visualization. So I can come down here, I can open this up, and here's all the different pieces I have. I might want to, I don't know, I can pick any of these. I'll pick, yeah. Whoops. I just changed that visualization. This is a thing in Power BI, not a, because I had that highlighted. I'm just going to go ahead and click here. And just in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through and do all this, but you can see that I could go ahead and I could add new data fields, column fields, whatever it is, and I could add stuff from the other view that I already had in here as well to this same visualization. So that's how you use the Power BI connector in a really quick half-hour session. Obviously, if you have interest in seeing more or learning more about that, do not hesitate to contact us. And if anyone wants to hang out on the phone or has questions, I'm happy to continue. And if you there's so many people on here right now, I think I'm going to ask you guys to use chat. Go ahead and you can ask me a question if anybody has any questions, and I'll talk about it. Otherwise, that was today's session about the Power BI connector available with the new 7.1.2 release of Stratum that allows you to take data from your Stratum data hub, take advantage of the views and the value you've built and the information you have and the views that you have, and use those up in Power BI to see some additional visualizations. Any questions? Feel free. I am watching chat, I believe. Oh, there we go. I was looking at the wrong thing. Yes, so I had a question, is a broadcasting server license needed for a Power BI connector? So yes, it is. If you'd like to trial the Power BI connector, you can just install 7.1.2 and ask for and you can ask for a code that'll enable the broadcast server for 30 days so you can take a look at it. Rita, the answer to your question is you would need to, I think you're asking me, when you're looking at Power BI today, you don't have the Stratum View component that I showed, and that's because you guys don't have the latest version and you have not installed on your PC the Stratum Power BI connector. So you have to get the upgrade to 7.1.2 and then install that on your PC and you'd be good to go. Anyone else? Any other questions? As I said, feel free to use the information here. You'll find information out on CustomerNet for this. If you post a question on the forum, we can respond and actually put some examples out there, or contact me or info@sylvan.com, or support if you have other questions about the connector or about the other pieces. Matt, yes, I do actually expect the Power BI connector to possibly, well, I should be careful. Yes, I expect it to be upgraded. It is a separate MES file, Matt, so there's a component of it that we could upgrade if they add new features to Power BI that are specific to the connectors, and we can upgrade that separately. There's a separate part of Stratum which is embedded in the viewer component, which is the REST API I talked about, and if we upgraded that, you would need to also get an upgrade of viewer. So the point of that was we actually have the potential to release a separate update to the Power BI connector that would not require a viewer update, depending on where the change happens, whether it's in the connector code itself, which is in the MES file, or if it's in the actual viewer stuff, in which case we would require a viewer upgrade. There's probably no reason you couldn't push it, Matt. I haven't tried that. I can't answer that question clearly for you. But the question was that, so that's kind of mystifying if you're listening in. I got a question about large user base with the users are not admins on their PC, so they would need to push it out to anyone that wants to use the Power BI connector associated with the Power BI client. We did not, I can tell you, we did not test pushing it out, but I wouldn't, there's nothing particularly special about the Power BI connector. It's a file that you would need to place in what is a rather consistent location associated with Power BI on the PC. So I don't think it should be a problem to push it out if you've got tools to do that stuff, which most people do if they're managing their users' PCs. That is correct, Brian. So question was, does everyone need the Power BI connector? And they do not. If they're using the Power BI website to consume reports in Power BI, they do not need the Power BI connector. only the people that are using the Power BI desktop that are creating reports need to have the Stratum Power BI connector installed.